So we got some good news, some bad news about this roll cage. The good news is that we have to build it out of metal. The bad news is that I've been sitting around waiting for parts that just ended up not working out. So just been sitting here brainstorming about what I'm gonna do about this front bumper. So we ended up cutting the stock bumper to try to match the radius of the tire right here. There just wasn't a whole lot going on with this bumper that I liked. So in the spirit of our kit bashing nature, we picked up one of these new style Night Runner bumpers, and I'm gonna chop this thing up and see if we can get this thing to fit and actually look right on here. So and I just kind of realized, you know, that these stock bumpers just weren't gonna cut it, man. So, you know, looking at these Night Runner bumpers, and I just kind of started, you know, looking at the side posts. And what we did online is I just looked at where the post actually goes into the frame rails to the relevance to the height of the bumper right here. And I was like, dude, that's gonna be pretty dang close. So I'm gonna chop these posts off so that the IFS isn't getting in the way of them. We just cut one hole down so that I think it'll have a little bit more room. We'll test it and see. When we originally built the cage, I didn't have the windows installed. So these little two brackets right here were actually interfering with the original tubes that I had placed like this. So we just cut this one out, and I'm going through the process right now of kind of figuring out where that tube needs to be and then lengthening the windshield V-bar so that everything will work. So even though we haven't even figured out what material we're gonna make the cage out of, the mock-up cage has to work. You know what I mean? The whole point of doing a mock-up cage is that we don't run into any of these issues later down the road, which that would have been one. So let's continue, see if we can get this mock-up cage 100% complete with all the interior components, and then we'll see how we're looking. And we're moving on to the grill. Looking at some pictures online of some real Toyotas, it looks like they keep these square areas black, and then this little cross post and that cross post stay chrome. So we're gonna take some Testors flat black enamel paint, hit those areas with a brush, see if we can get it to look a little better. So I've always been kind of disappointed with the way that the model companies do their chrome plating. It just kind of looks like cheap, chintzy, doesn't really look like real chrome. And one of the things I always kind of admired about Tamiya is that they offered their plastics in black and then allowed me to get silver paint, which my buddy Adam told me about a long time ago, to use silver paint to actually touch up on the black parts, and it just looked way more realistic in my opinion. So, and I did take this out and just wash it with some dish soap, dry it, and then wash it again with just straight water. So I don't know, we'll see what happens here. I wish I could say I'm one of those dudes that actually likes the painting part, but I kind of don't. I mean, it's just a part that I'm not very good at. I feel like it's always like, it never represents like how I envision it or my actual skill level, and it's just something that's really hard to find the time and the, you know, the resources. So one of the ways to get good at painting this stuff is that if you want to like really experiment, get two bodies, paint one, build one, and don't spend crazy amounts of time trying to make everything perfect. And the amount of stuff that you'll learn is almost worth the 20-30 bucks for the extra body and the paint, you know, that you would need to actually run that. So on this one, I've kind of just rolled the dice and just said, you know what, dude, we got one body, we got one bumper, everything else, it's the way it goes. So with a 23 tooth pinion in here, we figured out that it makes contact with the spur cover. So when you put the spur cover on and tighten it down, it actually limits the wheels moving. So we got to take the spur cover out, hog it out so that it makes room for that pinion. So we just took the spur cover out, modified it out in the garage, and we just hit it with a Dremel tool. So I hit it with a cutting wheel down the side this way, and then a circular Dremel tool just straight through the center. And that gives us room for that pinion shaft to actually come out. So, and this is running a 23 tooth pinion and a 5400 kV motor. Man, do you guys ever notice that something kind of special happens when you start getting the lenses in this stuff, where it just kind of like takes on a little personality again of its own? And these lenses were done, you know, I looked at some YouTube videos, and they basically, you know, I've seen a lot of guys using this X26 clear orange from Tamiya, and that's what we ended up using just on the clear lenses. So same thing on the tail lights, it's that clear red X27. Yeah, I think these side markers turned out awesome, dude. This front grille is looking dope. Can't wait to get this thing mounted up. So we're totally gonna go against the directions where it's telling me to use styrene solvent glue or foam safe super glue. So I think we're just gonna hurt some feelings and use E6000 for these lenses. So my idea, until we can get this welder in the house so that I could actually get this truck out ripping, is to just give this cage a basic paint job. So we went back in, I fixed a couple of the bars, and we added some epoxy in a couple areas. It looks like junk, but we're gonna throw a paint job on it just so we can get it in the truck so I get this thing out ripping. So let's get this thing painted up and then we'll see how it looks. The time has come for prime and paint. So we're gonna hit this thing with some surface primer from Tamiya, and then after that it's gonna be a TS Tamiya paint for the plastics, and then a PS paint for the Lexan over fenders. Freaking blue skies out there, and it was still just like literally mist raining. So every time we get a little paint session in here, I gotta come back in and kind of course this to making it think that it's above 50. And then it's not crazy humid out here, so. All right, we're in the middle of painting, and I just kind of want to show you guys a little trick that I came up with. So we already got the back side of the doors and all the back side of the panels painted, and to get them elevated off of the deck, we just hollowed out this little cup and a little piece of tape, and it allows me to get the panels off so that I could actually get them painted and not have any paint sticking on the bottom. So we got all these panels already shot on the bottom just with some black, and we're just gonna go out, hit the front sides. I'm gonna get all the rest of these elevated and get the rest of this painted up. All right, we're gonna build us some shocks. So there's a good chance that these aren't gonna work. I gotta be straight up with you guys. So even though these look the part, I don't think that these are actually probably gonna work. Now the spring rates are gonna dictate that, but there's just not enough oil in these things to actually be really effective in a super heavyweight truck. Probably in crawling they work fine. So what do you guys think? Tell me in the comments. Are you guys fans of the green slime from Associated or some of this Losi shock O-ring grease? I've had way better luck with the Losi stuff, but all the fanboys keep telling me about this Associated stuff. So tell me what you guys think in the comments. What would you be using? We're committed to at least testing with these shocks. So I wanted to make sure with this Bronco that I had a completely different shock package that potentially we might be able to get a little bit more suspension travel out of, that I knew would withstand the weight of the truck. So that was kind of the idea with building up that Bronco and just kind of having a test bed. So we also tested adhesives, lighting, soldering, a bunch of different stuff. It wasn't just for fun. So a pretty cool visual demonstration that I came up with is just to build two shocks that are identical, except we use different weight oils. So one of the shocks has this green masking tape up top. And with that green masking tape, that just tells us which shock has the 32 weight oil and which shock has the 20 weight oil. We're just gonna use the 20 weight oil as a demonstration. So I'm gonna pull this down, and just what we wanna do is look at how fast the ball end comes back. And as we go to the 32 weight oil, same shock, same spring rates, you can see how much slower it comes back to ride height. And that's basically how the shock oil is just slowing down or speeding up the motion based on the viscosity. So the thicker shock oil you go, the slower the shock's gonna respond. And then the lighter oil you go, the quicker the shock will respond. I don't know how much that's translating on camera, but it's really easy to see. But it's just a good visual demonstration, and it just shows you how the shock reacts with different weight oils. And we don't want our preload collars all the way down. So what we want is, during ride height, we want to compress the spring just enough so that we have some stored energy. We want stored energy to get into droop, and then we also want some stored energy to compensate for when we hit the bumps, that it's slowing down the shock's ability. So without getting crazy with the spring rates, you could tune shocks much easier running a lighter weight oil, and you always want to start on the lighter side. So, and with that being said, I think we actually are gonna probably start out with some 25 weight, just go soft, and then work our way up if we need to. So we're gonna start out filling these shocks up with some 25 weight oil. So I forgot my bump stops. I got a little set of some old school Losi, some OG Baja Ray bumps, and I'm gonna cut them and show you guys how I run the bump stops on my Baja Rays. So they got these little rubber bump stops that come with the shock rebuild kits for the Baja Ray, and these are just the little stock rubber bump stops that come in a Losi Baja Ray. So we're gonna take an X-Acto knife and just cut it straight down the middle, and then use half of this on each shock. And then take this other one, same thing, cut it just straight in half, boom. And we got some bumps, and then we're just gonna take that bump that we cut and just slide it directly over the shaft, and then get our rod in. And that'll at least save the shock for, eating itself up. And then I wanted to get these on before we set the shock with the zero rebound, so we can try to set it right around there. And we got them all the way down onto the bump stops right there, with the shock oil just kind of cresting over the top, just letting some of these air bubbles come out. And then we'll just come back in a minute, we'll build these up. And there we have it. We got these King shocks all built up with some 30 weight oil, running the red springs both top and bottom all the way around on 4 corners. So until we get the body all fully built up and figure out where our ride heights are at, play with our preload collars, we're just gonna run this up and move on to the next step. Looking pretty good. Little rattle can special, know what I'm saying? And in the spirit of kit bashing, I decided to get a little creative. So we took one of the Night Runner bumpers, and I just trimmed it on both sides so that it would fit for the track width of our vehicle. So I cut it here, cut it here, and then trimmed off the top hoop. And my goal eventually is I'm gonna get a light bar, which I have on order, that's gonna fit directly in here, just a single pod light bar that'll be directly counted to here. We're gonna run some LED lights that will match the color of that light bar right there, and then we're gonna run a light bar up top. And what we did off camera is just kind of tidied up some of the wiring. So I came back through here, kind of cleaned up some of the wiring, redid some of the packaging and layout, so it just made a little more sense. Added some zip ties, put in a Y connector so we can actually power our underglow and some of the LED kit. We're running an Racer's Edge glitch buster, and still got to figure out where we're going to mount the power button, but everything's pretty finalized. Still, we're going to run Velcro. The interior body panel actually holds a lot of this stuff in pretty good, so I don't see that being an issue. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of point out some of the stuff we were doing off camera, and just kind of cleaned up the wiring, kind of more finalized, and kind of ran the wires off of the servo down to the frame rails. Just kind of cleaned it up, gave it a little better of appearance, and without having a paint booth and juggling this in between rain and sub 50 degree weather, I think it came out pretty darn slick. Let me just blow some of this cat hair off. This paint job turned out to be a lot more difficult than anticipated. Multiple days doing the prime, both sides, doing the corners, so we had to paint the bottoms, paint the tops, wait for the weather. It was raining multiple times. And it just became like a multi-week thing, waiting for stuff to cure, waiting for coats to cure. And then we got some of that TS13 Tamiya and realized that on the forums people are like, oh my god, it cracks, it does all this crazy stuff. So then I got paranoid, kind of waited a couple extra days. Did a pretty good job on the paint job. I mean, this is definitely a step up from your Mako edition down the street, you know what I'm saying? So came out pretty good, especially with having, you know, the weather not fighting us and the temperatures being so low. It's just made everything just a pain having to juggle this around, run it back inside, let it cure, dehumidify, get the heaters going, heat guns. So we're getting real close. I got all the parts prepped, I got the windshields prepped, lenses all painted, everything's painted up, we got the grills. I mean, we're pretty much ready to rock, so it worked pretty good. I mean, this is like the first time I've actually spent some effort trying to paint something. You know, the last Tamiya body that we did with that little crawler project I showed you guys with that honcho back in the day, that was just straight up like Rust-Oleum camouflage olive dread, so wasn't too much involved in that. This goes to all you Shugu haters out there. We're gonna be rocking this E6000 pretty much on every single piece, from the lighting to the windows to all the plastic bits. And just like the old school snap type models, it's got these capture points right here and then the capture points on the door, so a little post goes inside of here. So I'm just gonna dab these up with some E6000 and set up in these door panels. Yeah, dude, that E6000, guys, I think anyone that's never actually tried it or has had bad experiences with it, it needs to probably give it another shot, because this stuff has been crazy useful in the Lexan body department. I mean, I've seen that stuff flex and bend and basically adhere to anything and everything that I've ever tried to stick it to. So these are the front windows right here, and I don't think I want to run the full-size window, but it looks goofy without the little like front vent window. So I'm gonna attempt to cut it on this tape line, see how it comes out. And I'm kind of hoping that these will work with the old snap and score. So we just use a razor to cut on this tape line, and come on, baby, there it is. There we go. Snap and score, no sanding. This back window, man, so I was kind of looking at RC Every Day. He's another YouTuber, makes some awesome projects, a lot of cool stuff. And he mentioned that this window's curved in the wrong direction, so I busted mine out and I'm like, yeah, sure enough it is, dude. So yeah, you guys ever get the feeling like it's just not gonna work? You know what I mean? It's like, I did this like no problem off camera with the Bronco and was all like feeling like, yeah, this technique's gonna work, bro. And now I'm like, I don't know, dude, it's gonna be tight, man. You know, just a toy. Just a toy, don't sweat it, dude. You only spent a week painting this thing with a heat gun in sub 50 degree weather while it was raining. Boom, look at that, beat it up. We're gonna rock. Let's go for it, going for it. I'm gonna get some lead weights for the SE10, I'll be right back. And this is our crazy contraption that we came up with to get this glued in. So we got the little wooden dowels holding the front section of the window and then just straight weights in the back. And I'm gonna go in here right now and kind of simulate a weld with this E6000 to kind of give a little exterior bond. We just gotta wait for this E6000 to set up. We'll do a few more seams around the windows once everything tacks and get it all finalized. Do these side windows, get everything out of there, and then we are on the final assembly. It's looking pretty good. And one of the last pieces we need to complete this thing is a Gearhead 110 scale trail torch. We picked this up from RPP Hobby, and the little bracket rail mounting systems. I don't know if this is gonna actually work or not, but I sized the light bar to actually fit inside of these bumper channels. So I'm gonna bust this thing out and see if it actually fits, and then we're gonna figure out the mounting brackets and actually see if we can actually get this thing mounted up. I've been kind of getting inspiration from some of the movie model makers, and Adam Savage from Tested mentioned that some of the best model makers were actually not the best fabricators, but they were the guys that can get more creative with kit bashing. And the majority of some of the best models that have ever been made in Hollywood are not actually 100% fabricated, they're mostly kit bashed from different pieces. So I've been kind of taking inspiration from that, and that's kind of where I came up with the idea with this Night Runner bumper is, I looked at the front face of the Toyota bumper of the Night Runner and then looked at the front face of this and just kind of visualized where these frame rails came out of the back. And just visualized for myself and kind of said roughly that that should be the right height, you know what I'm saying? So we picked this up and it was a little bit wide, so we just chopped the sides and then chopped that dumb little center hoop out. And this is that scale torch, 110 scale to LED light bar, and this is a white and yellow light bar. And the idea for this was something like this. Dun, da, 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 we have light, and this thing is a legitimate torch, dude. It is legit hurting my eyes right now. Just wanted to show you guys how I got the ones with the side profile lights that are different color. I thought it's gonna have a cool look. And hopefully we'll tie into some of the other little orange and the blinker lights that we have, so. And I think the mounting solution on the bumper turned out great, dude, so. Stoked on this light bar, dude. RPP Hobby, Gearhead RC for the win. God, dude, this was the craziest thing. So just to get the hood to sit on this thing, I had to get up in here and just hit this with an X-Acto knife and take out like large amounts of plastic. Like, look at how uneven those cuts are. God, it just looks so terrible. But I mean, dude, this hood is like completely warped out of shape. So I had to cut like these little back sections right here just to get it so that it would actually seat. But man, I mean, you ain't gonna see that. I might even hit it with a Sharpie just so I feel better. But we got some party lights installed. And the way we've been doing this is one of these 24 lamp glow backed LED light bars from Amazon. They're super cheap and they work off a third channel, the RBG. They're programmable. And you can see it's just like a light bar that would go on the roof. And then what I had kind of done in the Bronco is run one of these in the back for Christmas time. And I had the Grinch riding this thing around and it was all green underglow and it just looks so dang cool, dude. So I'm thinking for when we take this thing out into the sand, this will be stashed up behind the bed and that'll shoot some underglow down onto the bottom. So I'll turn the lights off right now and give you guys a little peep what that looks like, change some of the colors. But I think this underglow setup's gonna look dope once we get the body on. You won't see any of the light, it'll just be underglow shining down onto the sand, down onto the ground. So we'll fire this thing up. Yeah, dude, you can see this thing's gonna throw vicious light down. Then we'll go through. Little police light bar. And I think with how good this light is and the quality of it, I think we're gonna be utilizing these Gearhead lights on future projects a lot, dude. So if you guys haven't, go check out Gearhead RC at RPP Hobby. And we went from being super stoked to working on this thing, avoiding eye contact when we passed the room, cussing it out, and now we're back to drooling over how dope this thing is, dude. This is a true specimen. And I'd say the only thing that I'm disappointed about is I think I warped these over fenders with my heat gun just in between paint coats. So in between paint coats, I was having to hit it with a heat gun just to keep the paint going. And I think in between then, we just got a little bit of, you know, I got sidetracked a little bit, had them warped. So I think the only thing that I'm not like super stoked on is that the fenders are just a little wonky in a few areas compared to how they were in mock-up. But for the most part, you know, when you get a couple of feet back, she looks dang good. So just stoked on the overall process. I kind of figured that the TS14 wasn't gonna have the same reflectiveness as the PS Black. So my plan is when we take this thing out to shred is I'm gonna get some car wax and just kind of go over just the cab section with real car wax, and it should kind of offset. I think in direct sunlight, I think you won't really notice. I think it'll all kind of flow together. So, and I still haven't sealed up the doors yet, but we got the interior roll cages all in, and that is that wood dowel. I'm still trying to save up for a welding setup. So if you guys want to contribute to the channel and help us get a welding setup, hit that like and subscribe. For me, this is the most advanced model and RC project I've ever undertaken. And I don't think I really gave myself enough credit when I actually got going on this to realize how advanced that this kit was actually gonna be. And this truck has tested my patience to the limit of my abilities of the hobby. You know what I mean? Like, there was a lot of stuff that went together really well on it, and there was some stuff that was just so wonky, like I have no desire to do another one of these kits. Project scale RC Prerunner is complete. Let's get this thing fired up, take a peek.